The third reason that we need to leave the cities is so that we can maintain the control of the education of our children in accordance with Yahweh's word, the Bible. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 to 7, it states, "And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and thou shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up." So we are to be constantly engaged in Yahweh's word as we go about our daily activities. And as soon as the government begins to dictate what we teach our children, that is a time where we really need to cry out to God for deliverance and to get out from amongst them, because we must maintain the education of our children in accordance with the law of God and the teachings of the new covenant of Yeshua HaMashiach. And we cannot afford the luxury of sitting back and allowing Caesar and his ungodly minions of petty bureaucrats and gay, lesbian United Nations officials to dictate what we teach our children. This is a commandment in Deuteronomy. We're actually being told what we shall do. And so we need to cry out to God and say, Father, you have said that we are to teach our children, but the government is forcing my children to have compulsory sex education and this, that, the next thing. And we soon get into this stage where teachers say, is your parents telling you this? Well, that's not very good. We can take them to court for that, and so on and so forth. So the state is trying to become nanny and control the children, to turn us into a Plato's Republic where the state is the all-powerful mother that looks after the children, and the parents are just the ones that bring them into the world. They're certainly not the ones that control their lives. This is in complete and utter disregard to Yahweh's commandments. So, let the godless nations that hate Yahweh and hate His commandments and hate His Messiah, Yeshua, let them go whichever way they please, but we cannot go with them. This is a very, very important thing. If we cannot educate our own children and have control over that, then we've lost the next generation. So we cannot afford to do that, and we cannot afford to do it because Yahweh commands us to teach our children diligently the commandments. And so that's what we will do, and with Yahweh's help. And those that have independent or homeschooling should be very wary of government aid. When the government wants to help independent schools by giving them money, then those independent schools are no longer independent but dependent on the largesse of the government. And if the government starts giving money, then they start gaining control of the thing. So we need to say no to the government's money, because the government does not represent the word of God anymore, and it clearly doesn't. So we need to say goodbye. And if Pharaoh tries to stop us, well, we can only cry out to Yahweh and ask Him to prepare the way. And it's very interesting that at the very time that they're trying to bring in a more godless sort of system, the whole world seems to be breaking down. So they may build their republic without God, but it's also going to be without us, because Yahweh's going to build His kingdom, and He's going to rebuild Israel, and the lost tribes will be regathered, or a remnant of them. That's what's coming. So we need to find a way through the messy time ahead, and I would really advise those that have children to find ways of getting out of the city for this reason alone. And we still have quite a number of reasons to look at. We must realize that Yahweh's people do not march to the same drum as the world and its system. And we don't want the United Nations and their sex education and their evolution. They may have evolved from apes and be going to godhood, but we are the sons of God, and we need to obey Yahweh's commandments. We're not animals, and we're not going to follow the evolving, or should I say devolving, United Nations and their animalistic and lawless laws. We are Israel, and we obey the laws of Moses and the commandments of Yeshua HaMashiach. The fourth reason why we need to come out of the cities is for the sake of security, or the lack of it. Ever since 9/11 especially, but also before that, the government in America and England and even in Australia have been increasing the surveillance society and decreasing our rights. The real losers since September 11th have not been the Muslims, but actually believers and the general populace. Anyone can now be taken as a suspect and held in prison without trial in America. And the bombings in London, or the shootings in Tasmania, or the destruction of the Twin Towers have only given the governments an excuse in order to take away our rights. And it's like the mob that comes to your house and says to you that you need protection, and you say, "No, I don't. I'm fine." And then they send the boys over at night and they beat up some people and steal some stuff. And they come the next day and say, "You need some protection." And you say to them, "You're right." And then they offer the solution to the problem that they've created. This is what's happened with 9/11. It's been engineered by wicked CIA or those sorts of organizations in order to take away people's rights. But you could say also that the Americans don't deserve to have their rights because they've used their freedoms for sin. And so, in a way, Yahweh is allowing the whole system to crumble and cave in on itself. When a body has a disease where it actually begins to attack itself, you know that the body or that person's going to die because the body's immune system is beginning to attack itself. Well, this is essentially what's happening to America and England and elsewhere, is that the governments that are there to protect the people are actually attacking the people through stealthy maneuvers. And the only reason they're able to do this is because of the wickedness and blindness of the people. So when the government takes over, or the New World Order takes over, well, it's probably because the body of that nation is pretty sick. And so they're just coming there to destroy it and to cut it down, which is sadly what is happening. So we're living in a surveillance society more and more. And not only do we have cameras in a lot of the major cities, but we've been indoctrinated for the last 10 or 15 years or however with these various programs like Survivor or Big Brother, where people are put on an island or in some place and they slowly pick off each other, and it becomes law of the jungle and survival of the fittest. A veritable game of snakes and ladders. So young people are being trained to dob each other in, to betray one another, and to behave like animals. And this is supposed to be the way that we survive, but it's actually the way a nation destroys itself. So we are not to go that way. And it's a very sad thing to see it happen. In communist countries, years ago, or in Nazi Germany or other places, they had what you call a police state, where everyone would phone up the police and betray one another. And sadly, we're living in a time where that very apparatus, that very mechanism is being used, where something innocent like the neighborhood watch scheme is now beginning to have something a little bit different, where you can ring up a phone number if you suspect somebody is a terrorist. You know, it might be some advertisement like this, and I've made a bit of a parody of it to try and make the point. It might say, "Did you know that thy neighbor could be a terrorist? Be responsible." Ask yourself, what would Big Brother do? If you see something suspicious, then please phone our free police helpline, 1-800-DOB-IN-YOUR-MATE. Yes, that's right, 1-800-DOB-IN-YOUR-MATE. Or 1-800-GET-EVEN. That's 1-800-GET-EVEN from your friendly neighborhood watch and state police. State police, police state. Sponsored by those that know and order society, or chaos for short. Those that know and order society. So we're all being corralled and are being taught to respect the government's authority. And that's fine to a certain degree, but what is happening is the government is beginning to abuse its citizens and turn its citizens against one another, just as they did in Germany, just as they did in communist Russia. So they're trying the same system here. So we need to get out of the cities for this reason. We need to get away from that system of control and suspicion that is being developed in the cities, where people will turn on one another, especially for financial gain or because they have a grudge. You may not have done anything wrong at all, but you can be detained as a suspect with this apparatus that's being emplaced. And so if you see these sorts of advertisements, this is the shape of things to come, where the country's turning into a police state. And I have nothing against police, we need police, but we are moving away from the rule of Yahweh's laws, and we're moving towards the laws of a godless elite that are basically destroying people. And all of this is in its infancy. It hasn't really shown its teeth yet too much. And so this may sound like I'm overdoing it or overstating it, but actually what has begun so innocently will soon begin to show its teeth. And during hard economic times, you'll find that some people help one another, but many others turn against one another. So I say, get out while you still can. The fifth reason to leave the city is because of food and famine. Firstly, the food that we get in the